Welcome to the Robin Square Podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Washington, and I will be joined by various special guests to talk about how to bridge the gap for neurodivergent students of color through bridge programs and nonprofit organizations. Stick around and enjoy. Yeah, no, I, I like that answer because it's still like giving people the opportunity to do whatever they want in life. Like, yeah, like once you achieve that, then like I don't know. I'm like that's amazing to be able to set your mind to something and actually see it come to fruition.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't always get to see that, or like even if they do like have that happen, like maybe they don't like register it at first, but like once I feel like the satisfaction of like realizing like yo like this is really what I was like praying for real like
Yeah,
I don't know.
your blessings come to life, right? In that sense, right?
Yeah.
Or your prayers come to life in that sense too. And like,
Mhm.
but again, it comes down to, I think for young kids in particular, and just making, your community and network is going to greatly affect that, right? And you know, while I think that we as an organization, maximize and find all these really talented Black and Brown students in the area, there are also a ton of other students that we don't, right? We don't grab, we don't see, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with it's just the chance in that sense as well, right? Luck does play a little role in being in the right place at the right time, right? Unfortunately, but at the same time, I think it really comes down to kind of the network and the circles that our kids are in, right? And um, I'm not here to throw shade at anybody in particular, but I think that has the biggest, those early years of kind of understanding society and kind of your worldview, I think greatly affects, I think your healing in that sense, right? So like in the work that I do in particular, I mean, I work with primarily fourth and fifth graders, right? We still super young, right? In that sense, like still have, I think, you know, malleable kind of worldview in that sense, right? And trying to not necessarily, we're not brainwashing kids here, right? But I think it's opening up their, I think, the possibility of life in that sense, right? And I can only speak to our organization and the kids that we work with, but a large percentage of our students are first generation Americans, right? Even more so, the first people are going to be the first people in their family to graduate college, right? And so,
Mhm.
when you're thrusted in that position of being the first in your family, as much as like folks want to help, like, you're largely doing it on your own, right? To some degree,
Right.
right? And it's really important that as you're going through those experiences that one, you have others, right, that are, coming from the same community or same perspective. I think going through that experience with you, because again, there's a lot of learning that happens kind of in the moment, but also too are in institutions and in places that are going to support that, right? Are going to kind of, take those students, take them under their wing, and again, showing them the ropes. Because again, I think you
Mhm.
think about like, I don't want to just generalize as white, families, because they're very much, white families that are kids that don't go to college, right? But again, from a historical standpoint, communities like that have been kind of gatekeepers, right? Kind of insulating all this information, insulating all these access
Mhm.
points, insulating all these, whatever perks, however you want to top it up, right? But I think what we do, or kind of organizations like us, and what institutions are doing now, right, is kind of leveling that playing field and sharing those resources and equities with everyone, so that if you so choose to pursue that we're at a time when I think, as you said, like information is just at everyone's fingertips, right? Assuming you have those things, right?
Yeah.
We're in a time where I think internet is seen like a basic utility, just like your lights and water. But there are also
Mhm.
still large swaths of the United States that are like kind of dead zones, right? That are kind of these limited, like limited in terms of technologies and things of that sort. So even if that's the case, I think for a large part of Americans, it still is kind of like this limiting factor in that sense. So, which again, I think goes back to like the importance of like the brick and mortar kind of institutional traditional schools, while as a meeting place, but again, doesn't mean that education has to be the traditional um, sense either.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that could open up a whole other conversation about access to I think that definitely is part of the conversation within these like bridge programs and nonprofits, like providing people that access um to like the technology and like what they like need in order to like be educated and all that. But I guess like on the flip side of the conversation as well, just like through your experience with like nonprofit work and all of that, if you'd be able to maybe like elaborate on that or like share some challenges that you faced in the nonprofit world. Like I just recently I've worked at two nonprofits so far. Most recently was my co-op job, which is basically like a 6 month long internship
Mhm.
through Drexel. Um, their main focus was like defending and advocating for First Amendment rights, but I worked there in like the administrative department, so I was a program assistant, and I kind of got to see like the ins and outs of like how a nonprofit works, how the departments align with each other, kind of how to like kind of how to run a nonprofit in a sense, but like from that administrative side. So I wanted to hear more about like your experience on that, and I guess yeah, just some of the challenges that you've been faced with.
For sure. And, it's a great question because I think nonprofit spaces, I think constantly experience challenges on a day-to-day basis, year-to-year basis, however you want to top it up, right? And I think depending on the industry or kind of the community need that you're solving or that you're hoping to solve, right? I think the challenges change too, right? Again, I think under the lens of education and kind of what we do in particular, and this is not necessarily to the institution that I'm currently working with, but just kind of like my general experience of working in nonprofits, I guess now for I guess technically my entire professional career, as a teacher too. Um, I think number one for nonprofits is resources, right? It's having the resources to run, to fund, to house, to recruit, to do everything that you need to do, right? And what that means that you have to have really strong kind of community partners, right? Donors, individuals, corporate, whatever it may be, right? Just having the right people in the mix, right? So that you can fund whatever community good that you're going to do, right? Because that's the inherent um, inherent like purpose of nonprofits, right? Is to provide some kind of good that I think generally speaking, like the government or kind of these other independent arms aren't filling, right? And so yeah, for resources number one. If I think about some other challenges of experience too, I think largely kind of fall under the resources. If you have all the resources in the world, I think you can really kind of accomplish whatever it is that you want to do, right? But there's so many different nonprofits in the world. I think attacking different problems or similar problems in different ways, and so I think that competition is also one big aspect. But I think about like an organization like us, like we're capped at the number of students that we can serve, right? In a perfect world, we can affect, we can bring in hundreds of kids, right? And afford an opportunity like this and to help kind of like that self-actualization, right? The self-realization that no, like I'm a great student, I can do all this, the world is mine, right? And that would be great. But again, like we're limited by the resources, right? And the resources ultimately, you can take in more kids, right? You could, but then also like that I think the impact of the program also waters down a little bit, right? Um, and the worst thing, in my opinion, is you know I think the worst job a nonprofit can do is doing a mediocre job, right? In that sense, right? If you're not doing great work, then what's the point of doing it, right? And at least that's my purview, right? Yeah, to some like doing something is better than nothing. Yeah, you're right. But if you're not doing great things, then like what's the point of doing it in the first place, right? Let's do it right the first.
Right.
Um, and so I think it's really kind of intentionally thinking about that. I think there are some, not everyone's going to be on your side, right? In that sense too, right? Just as much as they're like, great positive momentum in one direction, they're, what is that Newton's law of, what is it? For every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction, right? And that,
Yeah.
there will be like these antagonistic forces that, for whatever reason, maybe just purely haters or or just, or maybe they just don't align with like your worldview in that sense, that might actively, whether advocate or from a legislation standpoint, or maybe just in an advocacy standpoint, just don't align, right? So then that's a major challenge of kind of getting everyone on board, right, for this mission, and understanding why this is a public good, to have these institutions or have these initiatives or programs and organizations. Um, some other challenges as well. And I think that, these are not necessarily, I think, unique to nonprofits. I think unique to like any organization is just like, having the right people, right?
Right.
Because especially for nonprofit work, we're largely people facing, right? Especially as program folks, right? You want to have the confidence, when you think about a nonprofit, the greatest measure of the nonprofit is like their public image, right? And like the trust that I think the public, the outside public, the students, or the people that you serve, like trust is number one, right? People have to believe that your organization is going to do everything in their best interest to advocate for whatever cause that you're advocating for. And the moment that you lose that, you might as well just close up shop, right? Because if you don't have that belief, if you don't have that trust, then what are you doing this work for, right? And so that's why I think for me in particular, and I think our organization as a whole, like very, very intentional about how we interact with our people, right? In that, and I think we just believe it. I think you bring in the right people in that sense, that just believe that and want to do good in general, right? But at the same time, it just highlighting the importance of just how influential these relationships are, and how critically important to the organization's mission, to like the outcomes that you're trying to solve or trying to better, that we need to be authentic in that space too. We need to be ourselves. We need to be forthright. You need to be, whether people make mistakes, right? Everyone, we're human, right? Organizations make a ton of mistakes, right? But it's not necessarily it's not about not making the mistake. It's about doing what is right in the situation, right? So it's making the mistake, acknowledging that we made a mistake. Well, we messed up. Sorry. This is how we're going to fix it, right? And not trying to sweep things under the rug, because then that's when you get kind of these, like, some other organizations that crumble in moments notice, right? Because of things of that nature. So I think kind of going all over the place here, but like there are a ton of challenges in that sense too. From an infrastructure standpoint, from a personnel standpoint, I think from an area standpoint as well, that kind of makes this work hard. But again, I think, at least from my standpoint, one, able to provide a life and financial support for myself and my family, but also two, I think I find solace. Like, I've never been in kind of the business world. I've never been in like a for-profit institution, because I think, like, for me as an individual, that's not the way I align, right? Yeah, everyone likes making money, right? Like, I don't want to sit here in front and like, yeah, I think everyone's life would be better if they make a little bit more money, right? But at the same time, I think it took me a while to get there, especially seeing, like, I think my other peers kind of racing through like their professional lives and seeing them hit these different milestones and things of that sort. But again, kind of understanding that life's not a race in that sense, that it very much is a marathon. And I think I find solace, and again, not taking away from anything from like my good friends and people in my life, but I think for me, I think I'm blessed in the sense that I have, I'm in an industry where, you're earning a good life for yourself, but you're also doing good in the world. And like, what better combo is there? At least in my opinion, there's no better combo.
No, 100%. Thank you. That's like, I believe in confirmation, and I don't know, like, just hearing you talk about like nonprofit work, and like seeing that it is definitely possible to, I mean, make a living out of it, but also make an impact from like nonprofit work. I think, like you said, it is definitely very people based, community based, and all of that. And I think that's where I kind of like align with that, because I do like working with people. I like being able to see my impact, and like work towards that goal, kind of like hands on. And I feel like that's something that nonprofit work kind of allows to happen. Um, so thank you for that insight.
Of course.
I do have just some final questions, final thoughts. So what is what's like some advice or like some type of resources that you wish you would have received earlier on in life? And then the closing out question will be, what advice would you have for me, like in my future endeavors?
Yeah, those are great questions. Now firmly in my 30s now. I'm old now. But thinking about that too, yeah, and like I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's like, information or things that I wish I had because I feel like, and I don't want to sound like, full of myself or anything of that sense too, but I feel like I think young people in general, and not everyone's afforded opportunity like that in that sense too, but I think sometimes you have to like bounce around a little bit, right? Like I'm kind of like jumping to your second question before I get to the first one, but I guess they're hand in hand, right? But um, I think about like my path thus far, and hopefully there's many more pages to be written in my book, right? But like I said, entering undergrad, I was committed, like Dr. Menard, that's what I want to be, orthopedic surgeon. This is what I'm going to do with my life, right? And I think through some experiences of like, working as a, summer camp coach, working as these different things, I think again just expands your worldview in that sense too. And so, I think a great piece of advice would be just try things, right? Like, yes, I think, and I fell victim to this too. And I kind of alluded to this in the last question, but I fell victim to like people watch, right? I fell victim to like, looking at over my right shoulder, left shoulder, seeing what like my graduating class or kind of members are doing and like the internships they have or this and that, and feeling some type of way about myself, because of that too. Like, am I really like, am I doing it right? Am I doing X, Y, and Z right? Like kind of like again that I guess to some degree an imposter syndrome, right? Maybe not necessarily racially based or kind of access based in that sense, but more so just like, am I doing everything what I'm supposed to do, right? And first and foremost, no one knows what the heck they're doing, right? First and foremost, right? Like everyone is kind of just going through the experience, right? And so, I think it's important for you to just try different things, right? If nonprofits is definitely an area that you feel that you want to be in, then like try a whole bunch of different nonprofits that speak to you as a person, right? I think about the professions I've had. I guess prior to this role, I've had like 4 jobs, like 4 or 5 jobs before getting here, right? And you know, I think experiences do a wonderful thing. One, they either teach you that this is something that you really want to do, or they teach you like you never want to do this again in your life, right? And like both are really valuable pieces of information, right? And so, I'll always say experiences is great, are great despite if they were positive or negative, because again, like I think it helps you shape what the next experience is going to look like, right? And what you need out of an institution, or what you need out of like your teammates, or what you need out of yourself, right? In the next experience as well. So, I think that's the one piece of advice is just to get out there and try things that catch your attention. And, yes, of course you have bills to pay. Yes, of course you have all these things. Of course, they should, I think be able to, um, you know, support your lifestyle in that sense as well. But, I think you have one of the greatest gifts. I think you and your peers in the sense is that you have youth, right? You have time, right? I know again, it seems like every single day, like you got to have like your life planned out, but like it's not like that, right? Life is, I think you were saying in terms of success, right? Life isn't linear that, right? It's not this like graduate college, I get this awesome job, I find this person in my life if that's what you choose, and X, Y, and Z, whatever else that life has, right? It's very much peaks and valleys, right? Where you're going to have these like trying experiences, or you're going to have these great moments of success and celebration, and absolutely take stock of those. But you're also going to have like the pitfalls, right? You're going to have opportunities. Maybe you realize you're in the wrong profession. Maybe you get fired. Maybe you get maybe you get laid off, right? Maybe you fall, don't love what you do anymore, right? And so that's why I will always say to like our kids and to anyone that like just try a whole bunch of things, right? Just get out there and try some things, right? It's because again, like you won't know it's for you until you try it, right? And so I would say that's one big piece of information or advice. I would also say like trust yourself, right? I think we're um, I think as human beings, like we're constantly like, I think we're our harshest critics, right? I think for good reason, right? Because we know ourselves, right? Or at least we're trying to learn ourselves or know ourselves. But like, with that being said, that there's a reason why you're here, right? There's a reason why you're in the positions that you are. Right? There's a reason why you've found the success that you found to date, right? It's because you're built for this, right? And so, sometimes it doesn't feel like that, right? Sometimes it feels like the walls are falling in on you, and like you can't breathe, and I've got all these things on my shoulders. But at the same time, like again, not to get like religious or spiritual in that sense, right? But there's no challenge that would be presented that you can tackle, right? And so I think it's having that mindset, even though you don't feel it all the time, right? And just like the understanding that, I think finding solace in the fact that, like, again, there's a reason why you of all people are here, right? Is you possess some kind of talent, some kind of acumen, some kind of good, and it's important that you believe that and kind of run with it, right? See what else do I have for you. Yeah, trying things, um, getting out. I would say meet people, right? Get out there, meet people. Again, I think everyone has a superpower, right? Whether their superpower aligns with your interests or your powers, that's I think up for discussion. But again, you never know what's going to happen, by just saying, some complimentary words or like, meeting this person, right? So I would say be willing to interact with folks, be willing to like listen to people's stories, right? Which I think you already do, which is awesome, right? I think it's a great skill to have. Because again, like you'll never know like what that one piece of information you've been waiting for all your life, right? That one person might have it, right? And so, not like, again, I don't want to stay here like cynical, like, oh, you're just getting all these things from people, but no, like, but also I think reciprocating that, right, is being a resource as well. I think I can only can only speak to my experience as a Black man in this country, but also, going through, earning my undergrad and pursuing my master's and doing all these different things, that it's critically important that while we climb the ladder, that we're pulling other people up, right? Because very, very rarely is success a singular endeavor, right? It's usually the summation of all the people that came before you, all the people that are here currently, right, have influenced you some way, right? It bothers me so much when you hear people say, "Oh, I'm a self-made, this, and that." Yeah, maybe to some degree, right? But I think someone probably helped you out along the way, right? It's really important to acknowledge that, and give thanks to those people constantly, right? Because they didn't have to do that, right? They didn't have to necessarily do that, but they felt committed to you or to me or to whatever, to do like this good in this world, to pass along this information or experience, or to look out for you, or to whatever, maybe provide you the resources that you need, right? And so I think it's really important that, as we're receiving all of these like great gifts that the world has to offer and my life has to offer, that we're constantly pulling up the next generation with us too, because if we don't do it, who's going to do it?
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that might be it for now.
Well, thank you so, so, so much. Oh my gosh. I think this conversation was very impactful for me. Um, I loved being able to hear your story. I've always heard like from my mom and my brothers, like, oh yeah, like Mr. Menard, like he's helped your brothers before, like in the past. And I'm pretty sure that I met you at least once, like
We
at
definitely did.
Waterside.
I think it was like it's probably 2016, something like that.
Yeah.
So a while back.
So yeah, and I'm like, okay, well, being able to put a face back to the name again, is nice, and just like hearing all that you do, and how you're such an impact on like your community, like where on our community, honestly, where we come from, um, is amazing, and I can't wait to see like what continues to happen in both of our endeavors. Um, and I want to say thank you again for being able to be here, and talk to me about just everything that just transpired. Um, I think that like my main goal through this podcast was to be able to have these types of candid conversations with people who are kind of like in the similar fields that I am looking up to. And like I said, this is something that like I didn't really get to tap into as much with my major, but it's still very like important to me. So thank you. I can't say thank you enough, but
Of course. And again, like, like I said, I've had many people do this for me in my life. I'm more than happy to do it for others. Again, we have to have this like constant cycle or kind of train of people looking out for other people in that sense too. So, to say that, like, I'm a part of your network now. So like, if you have any questions, anything that you can, if you feel that I can be helpful to you in any which way, just let me know.
thanks for listening, and thank you to our special guest for being part of the Robin Square podcast.